The Forgotten Village. In the heart of the dense blackwood forest, there exists a village that time forgot. Its name is Knoxhurst, and it has been erased from maps and memories alike. The village is surrounded by ancient towering trees, their gnarled branches intertwining to form a canopy that blocks out the sun. The air is thick with the scent of damp earth and decay, and a sense of foreboding lingers in every shadow. I first heard about Knoxhurst from an old friend, Henry, who was an avid explorer of forgotten places. He had a knack for uncovering secrets buried by time, and his tales of abandoned towns and haunted locations always captivated me. One evening, over a few drinks, he confided in me about Knoxhurst. "There's something different about that place," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "It's as if the village itself is alive, watching you, waiting. I barely escaped with my sanity." His words sent a shiver down my spine, but they also sparked an insatiable curiosity. I decided I had to see Knoxhurst for myself. Henry warned me against it, but my mind was made up. I gathered my gear and set out for Blackwood Forest, determined to find the village that had haunted Henry's dreams. The journey through the forest was arduous. The trees seemed to close in around me, their twisted forms creating a labyrinthine path that was difficult to navigate. The deeper I ventured, the more oppressive the atmosphere became. Strange sounds echoed through the woods, whispers carried by the wind, the snap of twigs underfoot when no one was there. After hours of trekking, I finally saw it, a clearing up ahead. As I stepped into the open space, Knoxhurst came into view. The village was a collection of decrepit houses, their roofs caved in and walls covered in creeping ivy. The windows were shattered and doors hung off their hinges. An eerie silence enveloped the place, broken only by the rustling leaves and distant calls of unseen creatures. I approached the nearest house, my footsteps echoing in the empty streets. Pushing open the door, I was greeted by the smell of mold and decay. The interior was in disarray, furniture overturned, personal belongings scattered across the floor. It was as if the inhabitants had left in a hurry, abandoning everything. As I explored the village, I noticed strange symbols carved into the walls of the buildings. They were unlike any I had seen before, intricate, almost hypnotic designs that seemed to pulse with a dark energy. The deeper I ventured into Knoxhurst, the more unsettling the atmosphere became. Shadows seemed to move of their own accord, and the whispers grew louder, more insistent. In the center of the village stood an old church, its steeple reaching toward the sky like a skeletal finger. The doors were slightly ajar, and a faint light emanated from within. Taking a deep breath, I pushed the doors open and stepped inside. The interior of the church was dimly lit by candles placed haphazardly around the room. The pews were covered in dust, and the air was thick with the scent of wax and something else, something metallic. At the far end of the church, where the altar should have been, stood a large, ornate mirror. Its surface was flawless, reflecting the flickering candlelight in an almost mesmerizing way. As I approached the mirror, I felt a strange compulsion to look into it. My reflection stared back at me, but there was something wrong, something off. The eyes of my reflection were hollow, and a sinister smile played at the corners of its mouth. I tried to look away, but I couldn't. The mirror held me in its thrall, and the whispers grew louder, almost deafening. "Join us," they seemed to say. "Become one with Knoxhurst." Panic surged through me, and with a tremendous effort I tore my gaze away from the mirror. Stumbling back, I knocked over a candlestick, and the flame flickered and died. In the sudden darkness, the whispers turned to screams, agonized, tortured screams that echoed through the church. I ran from the building, my heart pounding in my chest. Outside, the village seemed even darker, more oppressive. Shadows writhed and twisted, and the air was filled with a palpable sense of dread. I had to get out. I had to escape Knoxhurst before it consumed me. As I fled through the village, I could feel unseen eyes watching me, and the whispers followed, growing ever louder. The path through the forest was a blur, and I stumbled and fell multiple times, my mind gripped by terror. Somehow, I made it back to the edge of the forest, and the oppressive weight of Knoxhurst began to lift. When I finally emerged from Blackwood Forest, I collapsed to the ground, gasping for breath. The whispers were gone, and the silence of the normal world was a welcome relief. I knew I had narrowly escaped a fate worse than death. I returned home, but I was forever changed by my experience. Knoxhurst haunted my dreams, and I could still hear the whispers in the dead of night. I understood now why Henry had been so insistent that I stay away. Some places are meant to be forgotten, and some secrets should never be uncovered. Knoxhurst is one of them, a village that watches, that waits, that never lets go. If you ever find yourself near Blackwood Forest, heed my warning. Stay away from the forgotten village, for once you enter, you may never escape.